The Committee on House Administration will come to order. Welcome everyone to the first hearing of our Looking Ahead series, The Architect of the Capitol's Strategic Plan for the 118th Congress. I note that a quorum is present. Without objection, the chair may declare a recess at any time. The committee is meeting today to hear testimony from the Honorable Brett Blanton, Architect of the Capitol. I now recognize myself for the purposes of making an opening statement. Thank you to our witness, Mr. Blanton, for coming to testify before our committee today. The Architect of the Capitol, or the AOC, is one of the largest legislative branch entities with over 2,400 employees and an annual operating budget of over $1 billion. Every day, employees from the AOC provide maintenance and work to preserve the United States Capitol campus, which is recognized around the world as a symbol for the American government and the freedoms that we enjoy. I want to say thank you to all the employees of the AOC for the work they do behind the scenes to keep the campus both functional and beautiful. We're also wrapping up a congressional transition where the AOC, along with support offices, coordinated the moves of nearly 300 member, committee, and leadership offices. This is no small feat, and I want to thank everyone who assisted in that transition. The AOC has also played an important role in the full reopening of campus after nearly 3 years of closures under the previous majority, and I'm excited that the Capitol's Visitor Center will start welcoming visitors for Saturday tours again, beginning March 4th. Changes to the House campus are occurring. Following the move of the Department of Health and Human Services, we have new opportunities in O'Neill. Last Congress, I did a walkthrough of the third phase of the Canyon Renewal Project, which is now in its final phase. That construction project is the most expensive the AOC has ever managed, with cost overruns of over 23%. I look forward to learning how to best protect taxpayers in this regard moving forward. Additionally, the AOC plays a central role in campus security, with you serving as one of the 3 voting members of the United States Capitol Police Board. In fact, just last week, the board voted to put up a fence for the State of the Union, which cost nearly $1 million. I have questions about this decision. Your organization serves both chambers and interacts with members, committees, and their staff more than almost any other legislative branch entities. With the AOC playing such a role here on the Capitol campus, I'm disappointed that over the last few Congresses, there's hardly been any hearings focused on your organization's leadership and long-term planning. I acknowledge this was an error of previous Congresses. In fact, you were appointed 3 years ago, and this is the first time you've been invited to testify specifically to the strategic plan of the organization. And this is the first time in 6 years that the committee has held a hearing on this specific topic. I believe there's been a lack of oversight of your organization over the last several Congresses, which at times has resulted in lapses of accountability. As chairman, I can assure you that accountability starts today. This committee will bring more transparency and accountability into how Congress, including the AOC, functions. Where we can, we want to do so in a nonpartisan way. Our goal for today's hearing is to get an update from you on numerous projects and initiatives under your organization's purview, some of which I briefly mentioned, and to learn more about the strategic plan for the organization. I'm also going to address the elephant in the room. We need to discuss your personal role as head of the AOC and allegations that have been brought to light by the AOC Inspector General. I've read the Inspector General report, and the allegations are highly concerning. I want to give you the opportunity to address the IG report head on, and I expect you to be truthful and transparent. But this hearing today will be about more than just the IG report. It will also include discussions about how accountability needs to be reestablished throughout multiple functions of your organization. After 3 years of being architect, it is clear that there's still a lot of work ahead to get the AOC to the standard of performance and service that Congress expects from a $1 billion a year investment. I fully acknowledge that part of that requires an engaged Congress that works to get the AOC the resources and structure it needs to perform. From where I'm sitting, it seems to be that after 3 years under your leadership, the organization still faces significant challenges, and the allegations in the IG report need to be addressed before the AOC organization can move on. Clearly, we have a lot to talk about today, and I look forward from hearing from you. I now recognize the ranking member, Mr. Morelli, for 5 minutes for the purpose of making an opening statement.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Stile, and thank you for convening today's hearing. I'd also like to thank Architect Brett Blanton for his presence today. I know the members are anxious for your testimony, sir. As the chairman has said, the agency of the architect of the Capitol plays a pivotal role in making the Capitol complex a place in which my colleagues and I are privileged to work, safe, welcoming, and functional. In addition to preserving the House and Senate office buildings and the Capitol grounds, this agency is also responsible for maintaining the Capitol Visitor Center, the Botanic Garden, two entities that provide additional ways for American citizens to connect with their government. The architect of the Capitol employees are ubiquitous here in the House. They are a necessary and invaluable component of the broader machinery that allows this institution to run smoothly. My staff has the opportunity to meet with representatives from each unit of the architect of the Capitol every month to discuss the agency's major projects and day-to-day operations. I want to thank you and your team for your continued efforts to ensure that those of us in Congress can fulfill our responsibilities. Notwithstanding the enormous dedication of the agency's employees, in October 2022 report released by the Inspector General, which is referenced by Chairman Stile, points to serious problems within the architect of the Capitol. While some of these problems have relatively simple solutions, there are others that speak to more deep-rooted issues with the agency's leadership, such as a lack of transparency, inappropriate use of government resources and credentials, and insufficient or ineffective internal mechanisms to check questionable practices and behavior. So I expect today's hearing to cover a wide range excuse me, of important topics, including what AOC leadership is doing to combat some systemic problems within the agency, and very much look forward to this discussion. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Without objection, all other members' opening statements will be made part of the hearing record if they're submitted to the committee clerk by 5 p.m. today. Pursuant to paragraph B of Committee Rule 6, will the witness please stand and raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Let the record show that the witness answered in the affirmative. I'll now introduce our witness, Mr. Brett Blanton. Mr. Blanton, we appreciate you being here today and look forward to your testimony. As a reminder, we've read your written statement and it will appear in the full record hearing. Under Committee Rule 9, you are to limit your oral presentation to a brief summary of your written statement unless I, in consultation with the ranking member, extend that time period. Please remember to press the button on the microphone in front of you so that it is on and the members can hear you. When you begin to speak, the light in front of you will turn green. After 4 minutes, the light will turn yellow. When the red light comes on, your 5 minutes has expired, and we will ask you to please wrap up. I now recognize Mr. Blanton for 5 minutes.
Thank you. Chairman Stile, Ranking Member Morelli, and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you. I welcome the opportunity to share more about the agency's work, our efforts to support Congress, and the path ahead. I also appreciate the opportunity to address the allegations by the agency's Inspector General, since this is the first opportunity I've had to be able to do so. Roughly 2,400 Architect of the Capitol team employees support the daily operations of Congress, the Supreme Court, and the Library of Congress. Coming into this role, I quickly realized that this critical work requires attention 24 hours a day. The daily care of the Capitol complex's 18.4 million square feet of historic facilities, 570 acres of grounds, and thousands of work of art is far beyond what our founding fathers could have imagined. I have spent my entire career in public service. I graduated the Naval Academy and have served our country with distinction ever since. I was honored to have been selected by a bipartisan, bicameral commission and to have been nominated into this position. I could never have imagined that I would be part of the response of an unprecedented worldwide pandemic within the first few weeks of my confirmation. I am proud of the work that the agency has done to procure supplies and services for the legislative and judicial branch. Since being sworn in, I have remained focused on safety of our employees as well as everyone in the Capitol complex. As you all know well, we then face another extraordinary and unprecedented challenge with the breach of the Capitol on January 6th. Once again, I was so proud and grateful of the unwavering and steadfast work of so many AOC employees in order to ensure the mission of Congress could resume as quickly as possible. Given the incredible challenges that the agency has overcome the last 2 years, I am frustrated by the current distraction created by the Inspector General's report regarding the execution of my responsibilities in this position. I wholeheartedly reject any assertion that I have engaged in unethical behavior during my service to this country. While serving in this particular role, I have taken my commitment to transform the agency's culture to promote positive workplace for every AOC employee. Moreover, I have fully invested to ensure that I meet the responsibilities and the expectations of this role. Since I have only had the opportunity to review the Inspector General's summary report, I can only speak to the language I have seen. I will say that the report is filled with errors, omissions, mischaracterizations, misstatements, and conclusory statements lacking evidence. For example, the agency stated publicly the purpose of the architect's vehicle is for the direct support of the continuity programs and to allow the architect to remotely support agency operations and campus emergencies. In the legislative branch, information about these programs is shared on a need-to-know basis. It is inaccurate to characterize the state of the vehicle is only for home-to-work purposes. The agency is a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week operation. As such, having the vehicle with the architect is vital for him or her ability to communicate and quickly and safely return to campus at any time. Shortly after 9/11, the vehicle was appropriated to directly support resiliency, security, and continuity of operation programs for Congress and the congressional community, including my service on the Capitol Police Board. I realize we don't live in a world of absolutes. And with that said, I caution against the use of yes or no questions as they don't provide the necessary context for any answer. With the emphasis on safety and security, I am working every day to coordinate with partners across campus to improve and preserve the Capitol campus for those visiting and working. As a member of the Capitol Police Board, I continue to work in a productive partnership with the U.S. Capitol Police, the House and Sergeant at Arms, and other security officials. Physical and cybersecurity are my top priorities. In addition, I remain focused on the implementation of measures to make sure the AOC is doing everything possible to ensure we are safer and more prepared than we were 2 years ago. To conclude, we recognize the importance of an adequate long-term multi-year approach to facilities management, focusing on maintaining, preserving the Capitol campus while also modernizing facilities. With support of Congress and the incredible talent of a skillful team, I am proud of what we have accomplished and look forward to the success of future projects. On behalf of all the AOC staff, I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Blanton. We will now question the witness under the 5-minute rule, beginning with me, followed by the ranking member. We'll then alternate between sides. I now recognize myself for the purpose of questioning our witness. Mr. Blanton, the AOC Inspector General has alleged that you misused your official vehicle in a variety of manners, misled investigators, impersonated a police officer, and violated ethics by hosting private tours of the Capitol when it was closed to the public. The report is very detailed, over 800 pages, and I request unanimous consent that the 10-page executive summary of the IG report be entered into the official record. No objection, so ordered. Mr. Blanton, this report was released 3 months ago, and yet you have made no public statements prior to today's opening statement denouncing these allegations or explaining these circumstances to the American people. This committee has promised to give you the opportunity to further explain yourself on the record, and I'd like to begin with a series of questions. Are the facts set forward in this IG report true?
I would say they're an interpretation, and they had a narrative that was, I would say, predetermined, that they, in the 10-page summary report, where they picked facts to try to justify a narrative.
Did you, so let me maybe then dive in. Did you impersonate a police officer or misrepresent yourself as law enforcement as noted in the 10-page executive summary?
No, it's actually very, very interesting because when I was subpoenaed to testify when a drunk driver hit my 17-year-old daughter's boyfriend's car, and when I talked to the Commonwealth Attorney, they asked me, are you MPD? Metropolitan Police Department, sorry, just so everybody knows. I said no. I said, I'm a member of the Capitol Police Board. And I even looked over to my wife and go, I wonder why they would think I was MPD. Now, in that time, and in there, I sat in the lobby of the courthouse in Fairfax County for approximately 2 hours. The only thing I did was show the Nest Cam video of the vehicle striking my daughter's vehicle, my daughter's boyfriend's vehicle, to the Commonwealth Attorney. Our IG knew that, but they chose to characterize it that I was sitting in pretrial meetings as well as judicial proceedings, which I was in none of that. I was in the lobby the entire time of the courthouse in Fairfax County.
Thank you for providing additional color on that point. Maybe I can follow up with an additional question here. And you referenced it in your opening statement regarding private use of a government vehicle. Did you use the government vehicle for personal purposes?
I wouldn't call it private use or personal use. As I alluded to, the job is 24/7. Being able to respond to Congress and the Supreme Court requires me to be in a state that I could get back to Congress at any time. And so, if, I'm going to say a hypothetical here, if I am somewhere which would require me to travel in a personal vehicle in an opposite direction of the Capitol to pick up my government vehicle that Congress appropriated so that I could respond back and use the equipment in the vehicle to communicate with my staff, to communicate with the Capitol Police, and to communicate with the Capitol Police Board. If I had to do that and then go back to Congress, that just delays the reaction of my agency and my leadership to our agency to the entire Capitol campus, and frankly puts everybody at risk.
So during the period of time from August 8th to August 23 in 2020, while you were on leave from the AOC, I believe for a family vacation to either South Carolina or Florida, was that the purpose for using that vehicle at that time?
So I used that vehicle, to be honest, because I was under the frank assumption that I had to use that vehicle, because one of the unique things about the vehicle is, regardless of where I am in communications with the Capitol Police Board. While I was there in Florida and in South Carolina, I was attending meetings, because at that time, everybody was in a virtual world. So I was working. It was more likely an alternate work site. Also, I took care, and when I planned my trip, to be in a location that had the opportunity for military airlift should an emergency happens, for me to be able to get back to the Washington, D.C. area.
Thank you for that information. I would note that the policy defines HCW transport as, quote, the use of an AOC motor vehicle to transport employees between their homes and places of work. This includes the use of an AOC motor vehicle solely for the purpose of supplementing part or all of the employees' commute. I'll ask just one final question on this point. I know we have a lot of members that want to also be asking questions. On January 6th, a date obviously of significance here on Capitol Hill, did you utilize your government-issued vehicle to come to the Capitol?
I absolutely utilized my government vehicle, and I'm glad to be able to make this point to everybody. That vehicle was served as AOC's mobile command post during the events of January 6th. I was in that vehicle. listening to police radio, on my computer, and on my phone, directing AOC personnel in our support of Congress during that event.
But did you drive the vehicle?
No, I did not drive the vehicle back. It would have been not prudent to drive the vehicle back because there would have been next to no way to get onto this campus at that time with the number of people that were there. And that actually that actually demonstrates the purpose of why the vehicles that AOC, the House and Senate Sergeant-at-Arms have is because we are able to operate remotely and be able to be in command and control of all of our staff because of that vehicle. And that is also why it is prudent that that vehicle exists and the vehicle is with me. Because, for example, hypothetically, if I'm at Home Depot and something happens, then I would have to, there would be a delayed response to the Capitol complex.
Well, I'm cognizant of the time. I appreciate your willingness to provide additional details as it relates to the Inspector General's report. I will note my frustration that it's taken you so long to come forward publicly to address this, because the concern here is that while you're engaging here with us today, we want to make sure that we're reestablishing the strength and integrity of the leadership of the architect of the Capitol writ large. Cognizant of the time, I will now conclude my remarks, yield back, and I now yield to the ranking member, Mr. Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, sir, for being here. I want to go back over some testimony you just gave to the chair. So I know that you have described, and I think this is the right term, that you need to be tethered, your vehicle needs to be tethered to the architect, meaning you, so that you can respond directly to get to the Capitol. So I'll admit, given the chairman's question about whether or not you were here on January 6th, which seems to me probably the greatest emergency the Capitol has faced in probably 2 centuries. If you need to be tethered and if you needed the vehicle to be here, why did you make the decision not to come here? And could you not have, without the vehicle and all the emergency equipment that's attached to it, could you not have fulfilled the same function at home using a cell phone?
No, I could not have, because I wouldn't have the police radios.
You wouldn't have, excuse me?
The Capitol Police radios that were and the equipment that are in the vehicle that would allow me to hear live communication and then be able to react.
Would you not, do you not, in your home, do you not have that, since you work out of your house a fair amount, do you have emergency equipment in your home, an emergency radio?
No.
But would that not be more prudent than, I think the cost of equipment looked to me like it was, according to the Inspector General's report, about a little shy of $40,000 to equip the vehicle. Would there not be, if you're going to work remotely and you're not going to use the vehicle in its mobile capacity and you're not going to come to the Capitol during an emergency, I'm sort of struck by, there seems to be better, less expensive ways to make sure that you maintain ongoing communication.
If we're only talking about responding to the Capitol, then yes, you can make that statement. However, part of what we do is ensure that the continuity of operations for this entire body exists, and that involves other sites other than here.
The Can you just share with me, I'm just curious, a little deeper dive, and I don't have a ton of time here, so why your presence wasn't required here on January 6th?
I wouldn't say it wasn't required. What I said in my statement to the chairman is that because of the activities getting to the Capitol on that particular time when the breach occurred would not have been practical, because I would not be able to get onto the Capitol complex because of the security situation. And
Could
frankly,
you not, I'm sorry, just given the fact that you're equipped and you have obviously credentials, would you not have been able to get through the security quickly?
It's not necessarily security. It was the thousands of people that were blocking the access to the Capitol.
Let me just go on. The notion that you need the car to be with you at all times to be tethered to it. Can you explain how there have been, at least in the Inspector General's report, times when the vehicle's been used by members of your family where you're not in the car? How would you have responded to emergencies in those circumstances?
So I'll have to say that you would have to address that with members of my family, because the times that I knew when my wife drove the vehicle and my daughter drove the vehicle were the times that I was in the vehicle.
So your testimony is that your family members have never driven the vehicle without you being in the vehicle?
I'm saying that that would be something that would have to be discussed with them. I will also say...
Well, you're not suggesting we bring members of your family in to testify before us, are you?
No. I'm just saying that when my daughter was interviewed, who was 17 at the time of the allegation, and 18 during the time that she was interviewed, she told me afterwards that she felt like she was pressured to make statements that were not fully providing the context, and statements that she didn't actually feel like were actually accurate based off of what she remembered. And so they used those statements to try to make comments about me.
So, and I apologize, thank you, sir. But just to be clear, your testimony is that at no point are you aware of family members using the vehicle without you being a passenger in the vehicle?
My recollection is no.
Okay.
And but I will say, to be honest, I can't say 100% definitively, because that may have occurred or it may not have occurred, but specifically to your statement.
Well, let me just observe that I think if you felt the need to go to South Carolina or Florida on vacation and have the car with you because it needs to be with you at all times, and yet there are allegations, pretty serious ones, that members of your family use it without your presence in the vehicle, it seems to undercut the argument. With that, I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Loudermilk for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Blanton, I'm going to move off to another subject so you can take a breath there for a moment.
Thank you.
I want to talk about the security of the Capitol itself. You know, we brought up January 6th here, and a lot of changes have been made and a lot of money has been spent. And I want to specifically start off with the fiscal year 2021 security supplemental that was provided, a value of $300 million to your office to address security issues. Was the entirety of that amount, $300 million, used in the area that was designated, that it was supposed to be?
So it's been obligated, and it was specifically for $283 million for Windows, $17 million Windows and other security upgrades, which relate to the Senate projects, and then $17 million for security cameras. So that is the only area that we will be expensing money from that security supplemental.
Okay, so let's make sure I got this right. $283 million for Windows?
Yes.
Is that?
And that's across campus, that's not just on the House.
So it'll be Senate, House, and we can get in.
Senate and House office buildings.
Okay. Then we can discuss the details on that at another time. $17 million is for
security cameras in the Senate and the House office buildings.
Are these additional cameras to what's there, upgrade to what we already have, a combination?
There are additional cameras. The scope of it was for the first and second floor to the House office buildings. And I want to be very clear, it also did not include anything for the Capitol building itself.
Okay. And so the money has not completely been used at this point, which is saying it's
It
still.
has been obligated but not expensed.
Has any of it been expensed?
So design work has been expensed.
Okay.
One of the, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
one of the challenges that we have with the storm windows is when you have buildings such as the Rayburn building, where they have a facade as opposed to being solid stone. We found during inspections prior to, routine inspections prior to the supplemental, that the windows themselves appear to be causing cracks to the stone facade. Now, the Russell has had a challenge with its stone facade for years, and that's been part of our maintenance program in trying to come up with it. It appears that the windows are, the tall, narrow windows that you have in the Russell are exacerbating the cracks. And so we had to go back and completely redesign with our external support agency the window systems so that they don't damage the buildings themselves.
And that redesign is part of the money allocated in the 300 million?
We actually did the redesign from internal AOC resources.
Okay.
Because the money did not have anything for planning or design to it. We had to absorb that in order to fix the problems.
Okay. Is the Capitol in its state right now less secure or more secure than it has been for previous State of the Unions?
So I think in general, the Capitol is, and the Capitol complex is more secure.
Okay.
And part of that is physical security upgrades, but part of that, and the most important piece of it, is the communication that we've had with the executive branch when it comes to sharing intelligence and sharing security information, as well as with the intel community and the neighboring police forces around us. And so we have much better cooperative partnering agreements. We have a more robust ability for the chief of police to be able to declare an emergency without having to come back to a bureaucratic board and ask permission. And so that gives us the ability, as the Capitol complex, to be able to respond more.
Okay. Well, with that question, can you answer very quickly, succinctly, why did you, from what I understanding, there was no actionable intelligence of specific threats for this State of the Union? No, the House Sergeant at Arms disagreed with putting up security barrier. You and the Senate Sergeant at Arms agreed. Why did you believe that we needed additional security, the security fencing?
So, to me, it came down to a fiscal issue. And this might sound ironic to you that spending $872,000 could end up being you could have a cheaper option. However, in discussions with the Secret Service and the Capitol Police, they wanted to have, if we didn't have a fence, 3 layers of bike racks. And then we would require additional staff and additional support from, that could be reimbursable from jurisdictions around us. And the math in my head was, well, it's going to be cheaper to put the fence up and have less people.
All right. Well, thank you for that. I do have additional questions, but I can submit them for the record or if we do a second round. Thank you.
The gentleman yields back. I would request our witness, if you could pull your microphone closer, it might assist some folks here being able to hear your remarks. I now recognize Ms. Sewell for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Blanton, as the chair said in his opening remarks, this is really about accountability, both professional accountability with respect to the strategic plans and framework for moving this, the Capitol complex forward, as well as personal accountability. And while the strategic plans are critically important, I have to tell you, as a new member of this committee, it is particularly troubling that only until today have you been willing to address the 800-page IG report. The findings of the IG were particularly startling. You know, I think that we are all here because we are entrusted by the public to do and to represent this government, this nation, in a personally responsible and ethical way. My question is, has anyone ever used the vehicle that has been assigned to you other than yourself? Simple yes or no.
As I alluded to earlier, I can't answer that as a yes or no.
Did your wife ever drive the car with you in it or not with you in it?
With me, absolutely, she has. And so has my daughter, as I stated earlier.
So, and why were they even driving the car that was there for you, for the use of you going back and forth to work?
Well,
I'm trying to understand that.
Yeah, so the vehicle itself is not a home-to-work vehicle, which is very specifically and very narrowly tailored.
Actually, that's, you know, something that the chairman just read suggests, I mean, it's black and white. It is for use to go to work and back to work. And frankly, sir, the fact that you would drive it to Florida, and yet on the day of the attack of this Capitol, which arguably was the most important day to have your presence there, why were you not here? I mean, the actual attack on the Capitol didn't take place until early afternoon, 1.
Why was I not here?
Yeah. I mean, do you not work from here?
Yes, I work from here.
Okay. I know that most of us were here at 9 a.m. that morning. So I guess I'm trying to understand why you were physically not here on a pretty important day, especially given the fact that you had access to information being on the Capitol Police Board about potential problems that may happen on the campus of this Capitol.
Well, as would have been litigated through the Senate and the House committees who looked at this, and has been discussed by...
With all due respect, sir, the IG said that the amount of mileage that exceeded the normal mileage from your home to work was something like 19,000 miles. My question is, have you reimbursed the federal government for the nearly $14,000 in excess benefits that you have received due to improper use of the vehicle?
Thank you. I appreciate this question, and I appreciate the opportunity.
I'd appreciate an answer, sir.
No, I will give you a very succinct answer.
I only have a minute and 30 seconds.
And I will be as succinct as possible. Those mileage calculations are absolutely incorrect. At the time that we...
Did you or did you not drive the vehicle to Florida?
But that's not what you asked. You asked a question about reimbursement.
Yeah, I mean, if you drove it to Florida and it was improper use, that mileage would count towards the mileage that you should be reimbursing this federal government.
However, in the IG report, as you alluded, those mileage calculations are absolutely incorrect.
You're saying that 800 pages of findings by the IG, you said in your testimony that you thought that they were framed narratives. So are you suggesting that the IG is not an independent arbiter of the facts, but rather has some sort of malice against you to actually frame it a narrative that's not correct?
As I alluded to it in my opening statement, I've only seen the 10-page summary report, and so I don't know what else is in there. I will say, though, that the IG assumed that because we went to half on, half off during the initial COVID, that I wasn't coming into the office almost every day. If we were still following this schedule that we did at the beginning of
I
COVID,
only have 3 seconds, and I
They-
just want to say
they would be
this,
a telework day, and
with
I
all due
wouldn't be here.
respect, I'm reclaiming my time. Mr. Chairman, I think it's really important that we get beyond, well, we actually get to the bottom of what really happened in terms of the ethical charges against the architect. I agree with you that the framework, the strategic framework of us going forward is critically important, but personally, if we cannot, if we don't feel comfortable with the integrity of the person who's in over it, I don't know how we can move forward. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I now recognize Mr. Murphy for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to make this very succinct and quick. Mr. Blanton, did you conduct a Capitol Dome tours in your official capacity when it was closed to the public during the pandemic?
yes, absolutely. I conducted tours with members of both the House of Representatives and members of the Senate, their families, and associated personnel with them.
The swim team that's mentioned in the investigation?
The swim team tour was an exterior tour, from my understanding, because the pictures that were posted from Facebook were posted on the exterior steps.
And you didn't offer that, or you didn't conduct that?
No, I conducted it, but the exterior of the Capitol was not closed at that time.
Did you take them inside?
I don't remember specifically the swim team tour itself. It was a surprise to me, but I do know my wife on her Facebook had pictures of her and the swim team on the Senate side of the Capitol steps on the
Okay.
East Plaza.
All right, well, okay, we can only infer. Just let me do two other lines of questioning. Has the architect of the Capitol fully returned to work in person? Have you been fully returned to work in person?
So we still have a telework policy. I am here effectively every day of the week. There may be days where, for example, we also have our COVID protocols and our health checklist that if you have any of the symptoms that OAP says are COVID-related symptoms, that I may call in and say, I'm feeling this, I'm not going to show up. However, I'm still working at that time.
I just would think, I've been a physician for 30 years. The public health emergency honestly should have ended a year ago. We're into an absolute endemic phase with this, and why people are not back in work in Washington, D.C. blows me away. It just absolutely blows me away. And you as architect of the Capitol, why you are not here every day, physically, all day, I'll just go on about that. Does your executive team come here and work fully every day?
In the original pandemic, I cut my executive team in half so that we wouldn't, because at that time, we didn't.
No, I'm talking about today.
Today?
Let's talk about today.
There is part of my executive team or me here. I mean, it's a rare week that I'm not here every day.
It should be, my opinion, your executive team and you should be here every day. You're the architect of the Capitol. You're in charge of this building. There's no reason for you to be doing stuff otherwise. So let me ask a few other things. I'm a physician and very well known, or very well versed with PPE and everything. You were given over close to $12.5 million for the PPE. Have you done any type of fraud review to see where all that stuff is? Was it spent correctly? And what its disposition is? Have you done any type of accounting oversight with that $12.5 million?
So I'm very confident with the money that we received for PPE. It was dispersed to the House, Senate, Library of Congress, our Botanic Garden, and Supreme Court for support.
What gives you that confidence?
The fact that I have had numerous meetings with my staff and discussing the distribution and the purchase of the PPE. I will also say that at the time that we were buying it, there were great fluctuations in the cost.
Absolutely, understand it completely. How much did you spend? Do you have any left?
No, that our COVID supplemental money is expired. We do not we have some minor inventory of PPE left, such as things like home COVID tests and things like that, but we don't have any money to procure PPE for the entire campus anymore.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, that's all my question. I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes Mr. Kilmer for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for being with us. Last Congress, the Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress was able to look at a lot of the role of the architect of the Capitol, including looking at issues related to the continuity of Congress. If, God forbid, there's a crisis, some of the role that your office would play. By statute, the deputy architect of the Capitol serves as acting architect of the Capitol in the event that there's a vacancy, but that deputy position has been open since 2019. I know that was one of the things flagged in the IG report. I think this leaves some question as to who would serve as acting architect if you no longer held this position. So I guess a couple questions. Why haven't you filled the deputy position? And if you can at least give us some sense of what efforts have been undertaking to hire a deputy architect.
All right, well, thank you for that question, and I think it's a very insightful one. What we have had legislative proposals since my first budget that I submitted that unlinks the deputy's salary to mine. I have no problem with the fact that my senior executives make more than me, and that's fine. I'm here to serve the country. I'm not here to get rich. However, if you want to attract and retain top talent, there needs to be a commensurate pay scale. And the fact that I'm one of the lowest paid executives in AOC, and the deputy would be paid lower than me, I've been trying to decouple that for several positions, including the CEO of the visitor center, from my salary, so we can actually get the top talent we need in the agency. And that's the reason why. It's hard to, at the salary that the deputy would get, it's hard to get somebody at that level that we need to want to be attracted to the job.
Has there been any effort to hire a deputy?
No, we're trying to get the ledge props through. We are hiring the chops, though.
So who would serve as acting architect of the Capitol if there is a vacancy?
Currently, it would be the chief of operations.
Chief of operations. Okay. I have a couple minutes left. I actually wanted to ask something not related to IG report. The Select Committee on the Modernization of Congress actually made a number of recommendations that are kind of in the purview of the AOC, primarily about space, how space is used within the institution. There are 3 open recommendations that sort of fall under your jurisdiction. One of them is about actually creating some bipartisan members-only space within the Capitol so that there can be some space for collaboration that's not necessarily, actually during the pandemic, there was opportunity off the House floor in the Speaker's lobby because it was closed to the media. That's no longer the case. So one of the recommendations was to actually provide some space for members to actually engage one another outside of the C-SPAN cameras. There's a similar recommendation focused on providing space for staff, bipartisan staff collaboration. And then a third, trying to ensure that there's space within the Capitol for hearings that might use a different kind of format. The Select Committee looked at roundtable types of hearings. I'm just eager to hear about any progress that's been made on these recommendations, and if the answer's too long, I'm happy to just follow up offline.
Real quick answer, and I appreciate everything that the Modernization Committee did, and I support those recommendations. In our '24 budget, we have money to study this. As you know very well, space is a combination of the House Office Building Commission, AOC, and CAO. And so what we want to be able to do is produce good recommendations. But the assignment of the space, as you know very well, is the House Office Building Commissions. However, one of the things we're doing in our current space in the Ford building is doing a demonstration of what a future office should look like or could look like, so people can come in and see, oh, I see this is wonderful. We would like this in this underutilized space.
Gotcha. Thank you, Chairman. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes Ms. Bice for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Blanton, for being with us. I am very concerned about the things that I've heard from my colleagues this morning. What is the current telework policy for the AOC?
So we have and it's very interesting because if you would have talked to me 3 years ago, my answer on telework would have been the same answer that you would have gotten from just any other government agency.
Today, I want to know what the telework policy is today.
So until the pandemic ends, we are still.
The pandemic has ended. The president even said so.
It officially ends May 11th, and that's when our policies are going back to where they were prior to the pandemic.
Which is?
That people can telework should their supervisors allow them to telework. However, if you look at my staff, the largest majority of my staff are people who can't telework because they have to be here to do work here. And so there's very, very few people who are actually telework in AOC. However, the flexibility in the policy, I think, should remain because it allows us to attract and retain the top workforces.
You said, replying to Ms. Sewell, that you are not in this building or on this campus on January 6th. I find it mind-blowing that the head of the AOC, the leader, knowing what you knew, probably a lot more than we did that day, would not have been in this building ensuring the safety and security, not only of the building, but of the employees that you lead. Why? Why were you not here that morning?
I will say to address the first part of what you said, is as has been testified into the House and the Senate, there was no actionable intelligence that there was going to be anything here that was presented to the Capitol Police Board.
I was day 3 on the job, and I knew, not having any intelligence information from anyone, that it was going to be a busy day because there were so many people here. You knew that people were going to be on campus regardless of whether or not they were going to breach the Capitol. Why were you, as the leader of this organization, not on this campus on that day?
Well, I can say this is a great example of why Congress appropriated the vehicles, because it acts as a mobile command center.
But you didn't come because you said you couldn't get on the campus, which I find offensive, sir. The fact that you would say that I wasn't going to be able to get in, I cannot fathom that. It doesn't make any sense.
I respectfully disagree with you, and I apologize.
Let's talk about morale. You mentioned earlier in your opening statement that you are here to improve the morale within your agency. What are you doing to improve morale?
Oh, we have some wonderful initiatives. One of the first one is we've developed a human capital strategy, and in partnership with that, AOC University, which allows people to further their careers so that they can go from, let's say somebody is a nighttime recycler and they want to end up being an electrician, that we are going to be able to give them the training to be able to change what their career field is. And I will tell you this. When I first got here, one of the things that AOC was known as is the last plantation. And that pained me when I heard that phrase when I was researching this job. Right now, Forbes has indicated to us that they are going to put us on their list of the top workplaces in America.
What's the turnover rate for your organization?
It depends on where it is. I mean, for example, at the State of the Union, I gave my ticket, my +1 ticket, to somebody who worked here 50 years. And so it really depends, because you have generational people here where my grandfather worked for the agency, my father worked for the agency.
Do you have data, though, on the turnover of your staff?
I will have to get that specifically for you, and I will respond back for a question for the record.
What about turnover for leadership? Do you have any information on the turnover for the leadership staff?
So we've had post-pandemic turnover, just like most agencies have. Many of this is people who are wanting to retire after many years of service. But I tell you, I view this as an opportunity for us as an agency to grow and get the right people in the right jobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes Ms. Torres for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to you and to the ranking member, Morelli, for bringing us together for this discussion today. I look forward to working with both of you and everyone on this committee to improve the quality of life for all employees and visitors here on this campus. Mr. Blanton, thank you for being here with us today. I am the ranking member of the Subcommittee on Oversight. Just for your information, there's been a lot of talk around security and the January 6th insurrection. I want to tell you that for every employee that works in this campus, whether they are maintenance people or members of Congress, that was a very difficult day, very, very difficult day, a deadly day. For some of us who were stranded on the balcony for 45 minutes, face down, crawling from one area all the way clear across the area, I am outraged to hear that you were in a comfortable place, sitting whether in your car or in your home, while we were screaming at the one police officer that was near Gallery 3, asking him to lock the door above us that was wide open after the emergency had been called and after every single one of our colleagues that was down on the floor had already been evacuated. I am outraged that you would be in a comfortable place, sir, while the rest of us were thinking about dying that day and how we were going to come out alive that day. Outrageous that you were not here. Do you know, sir, that that police officer could not close or lock that door because he did not have the keys to that door? Do you know that?
Well, that's news to me.
Oh my God. Here we are, 2 years later. This is all news to you. Trying to calm myself down because you bring a lot of anxiety to me. Your inability to do your job brings a lot of anxiety to me. When you were appointed to this position, did you sign? I know you took an oath of office, right?
Yes.
Okay, and that oath says that you commit to defend against enemies, foreign and domestic, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did you also sign an ethics statement, sir?
I'm assuming I did.
Okay, I would like to see that document. It should be in your personnel record, and I would like somebody to produce it to my office. Members of Congress and our spouses are subject to ethics and ethic violations. And I am shocked that you consider yourself exempt from that. Shocked by that, as a public servant that you are like the rest of us. Do you know that as a member of Congress, this is my 5th year in Congress, I have never taken a tour of the Dome because I have been told that there is a long waiting list and that I have to put my name on that waiting list. So do you not think I'm patriot enough to take a tour of the Dome? Do I not meet that patriot requirement?
I think
I'll let you think about that, and maybe you can come to my office and you and I can have a longer conversation
I
around
welcome
that.
that discussion, ma'am.
Throughout the investigation, the OIG obtained multiple social media posts created by Michelle Blanton. Who is that?
That's my wife.
That is your wife. Those statements included photographs of congressional license plates. the license plates that we use as security to come onto campus, correct?
That is a license plate that allows access to the campus, yes.
So that is part of our security.
It's-
So
it's-
you allowed your wife to breach security for members of Congress and every single employee that works here on this campus?
I wouldn't characterize it that way.
Well, I would characterize it that. Remember, I was the one face down, not you, sir. Your wife also posted pictures at the Dome saying, "This is happening here. All patriots welcome." I assume I'm not a patriot to you or to your wife. Maybe I don't meet that qualification. Who is a patriot in your eyes?
In general, a patriot is somebody that loves our country. It's got nothing to do with political parties. It's got
Okay.
somebody who loves the Capitol. I mean, every day
If you love the Capitol, sir, you would not have put us in danger either on January 6th by failing to do your job and being here. I flew across the country to be here. My time has expired. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. Mr. Carey is now recognized for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to address the witness. And you know what's tragic is, and I think as this committee will find, I'm a huge history buff. Love historic preservation. Love the Capitol. My plan was to be here today and ask you, and I will eventually, ask you about the historic preservation work that you're doing, asking about some of the things that we could do better with historic preservation in terms of the Capitol. But as I'm listening to my colleagues across the aisle and even on our side, asking you questions about things that really I wasn't planning on asking you, but I'm going to ask you now. Does the AOC, do any of your other team members have vehicles like you do, sir?
No. It was. In fact, I want to make it clear, too. I don't have the vehicle anymore.
So, but you said the vehicle was essential. Why do you not have it now?
Because Congress, in the last appropriations bill, chose to defund the vehicle.
So if it's a mobile operational center, as you alluded to earlier, where's that communication now? Is that in your home?
No. My opinion is it would have been better if they continued to appropriate it, but they,
But where is it now? Where's the communication that you have to have, since you have to be on 24/7, as you said earlier in your testimony?
so now it's going to occur via cell phone.
Okay. So the other question was, and I'm listening to, because I do want to get to the historic preservation stuff, because that's really stuff I care about, but these are questions that just came up as I'm listening to my colleagues across the aisle. If somebody else is driving the vehicle, and you're in the vehicle, but they're driving it, and it's provided for by the government, if that person is in an accident, who's liable for that?
I'd have to get back with you on that. I'm not a lawyer.
Would you, and neither am I, so that's why I'm asking a simple question. I mean, what is it? Do you have any idea? I mean, you don't know?
I don't know, but if I'm working in the vehicle, then I'm doing work, which has occurred many times.
Okay, but no other person in your executive team has a vehicle that was driven back and forth to the Capitol?
That is correct. We have a home-to-work policy. That vehicle does not.
I got that
fall
earlier.
under-
Let me ask you real quick, to Ms. Torres's question. I mean, so I know you weren't here, and neither was I, because I just came here in November 2021, but were any other of your executives on your team here on January 6th?
So I believe, and I'll have to get back to you on all the number of executives. I believe the House office building was there, because I was in constant contact with,
Okay.
the Capitol building superintendent was there, because I was in constant contact with him about how to change the flow of air to get all the pepper spray and stuff like that out of the Capitol and secure elevators and stuff like that.
Well, and I appreciate that. I would like to just kind of have an idea of how many of your executives actually were here during January 6th. I mean, obviously, I was not, since I was not even thinking that I would ever be serving in this position. Okay, so let me ask you just a couple questions. You alluded to the AOC University. Can you give me some information on the program and quickly do it, because I only have a minute and 9 seconds, and how it actually is going to help staff development and how you think that's going to help your staff moving forward?
Yes, thank you. So AOC University is mirrored close to what you would see in your normal corporate university, whether you're a large construction firm or you're an IT type firm. And it's really meant to offer the courses and training so that staff can either cross-train into something else where we have shortages or further their careers. And so we have, we've partnered with Precipio, which is an online training center, and are able to give staff classes where it's going to be free to them, but allow them, if they want to go from an electrician to an electronics mate, for example.
Okay, so I have 23 seconds. How does this is the stuff I really wanted to talk about. How does historic preservation work factor into your strategic plan for the AOC?
So that
At
is
10
actually,
seconds.
Yeah, that's actually one of our core missions, is to serve, preserve, and then inspire are our 3 core missions. So historic conservation is obviously exceptionally important, but there's a tension between modernization and historical prevention. And I would love to have a continued conversation with you.
Let's do that, because we're now 11 seconds over. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate your indulgence, and I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes Mr. De-Esposito for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, sir. Just in a brief 10 seconds, can you just tell us a little bit about your career path prior to becoming the architect of the Capitol?
So I graduated Naval Academy, retired. I spent a time as a civil engineer corps officer in the Navy. I briefly worked for a private consulting firm doing infrastructure. Then I worked at the Airport Authority as a deputy vice president, and then was during the bipartisan process was recommended and then nominated.
Great, thank you. So at no point did you, well, first of all, thank you for your service to the country. And at no point did you graduate from any law enforcement agency's police academy?
No.
Okay. So there's a part of the report dates back to 2020 when apparently there was an issue with a motor vehicle accident. In the report, it states that you used your official vehicle to pursue said vehicle and then detain the driver. First, did that happen? It's a yes or no question, sir.
It's actually, if you don't mind, sir, it is a nuanced question because I followed the skid, the vehicle that hit my daughter's boyfriend's car. Wheel broke, and I followed the skid mark around my neighborhood.
Okay.
I never detained because when I stopped and called 911 at the person's house, he went inside and then went out his back door.
I would hope you didn't kick the door in and go get the guy.
And the Capitol, and the Fairfax County Police caught him walking through the neighborhood.
Okay,
And
so
there was no detention whatsoever.
looking back at it now, do you believe that that was appropriate use of your government vehicle?
I think it was appropriate use of any citizen in the United States would follow a drunk driver who did a hit and run.
How did you know at that point that he was drunk?
But what I did know, it was a hit and run.
Okay.
And that's why I followed it.
Okay. Now, when that report was filed, from what was listed in the report from the OIG, I guess was it the Fairfax Police Department that handled the job?
Yes.
Okay. And I guess at some point during your interaction with the Fairfax Police Department, and I just want to preface this with, I spent my career in the New York City Police Department. I'm a proud NYPD detective. And I take this stuff very seriously. And one of the things that's most important to me and one of the things I'm most proud of to be able to work on both sides of the aisle here is to enhance everything that we can possibly do for the Capitol Police Department. So my question is, I'm not sure if it was because of the way that you followed the vehicle, followed the skid marks to the home, or if it's something that you presented. But the officers who filed the report from Fairfax County identified you as a member of service, a member of law enforcement.
They identified me as MPD.
Did you identify yourself as a member of the Capitol Police Department? It's a yes or no question.
All I know is I can tell you, I did not identify myself as MPD. I would have said, and I don't know the specifics right at this time, I just can't remember, that I was on the Capitol Police Board.
Okay.
If someone misconstrued that as an officer, but I clearly would have never done an MPD.
But preparing for today's testimony, don't you think that's something that we should have probably tried to remember? I think it's a big part of the report that the OIG did. So you're saying that you never claimed to be a member of law enforcement, but you did say that you were a member of the Capitol Police Board?
Yes.
Okay. And when they referred to you in the reports, or when they referred to you on the scene as a member of service, at any point did you disagree with them and say, sir, ma'am, I am not a member of law enforcement. In fact, I am a appointed member of government, and I sit on the Capitol Police Board as part of my service as the architect to the Capitol. The architect to the Capitol and being a member of law enforcement and having arrest powers are two very different things.
I completely understand that, and that deference occurred when I was subpoenaed to testify and sat in the lobby of Fairfax County Courthouse, and the Commonwealth Attorney asked me, "Are you MPD?" And I said, "No."
How long after the incident was that?
Oh, maybe a month or so.
So in that month, you didn't read anything, any reports from the day. You didn't read anything from the Fairfax County Police Department that identified you as a member of service.
No, I found out during the investigation that two things that were a problem. That at least, and I said from the beginning, I've only seen the 10-page report, and they identified my wife was actually my 17-year-old daughter at the time, and secondly, they identified me as MPD, and those are both errors. And when I was sitting in the lobby, the waiting room of Fairfax County Courthouse, I told that to the Commonwealth Attorney. All I did was show the Nest Cam video of the person hitting my daughter's boyfriend vehicle and then driving away. That's the extent that my interaction was with anybody there.
I think my time expired. Thank you, Chairman.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes Ms. Lee for 5 minutes for the purpose of asking questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Blanton, I'd like to begin by returning your attention to the temporary security measures that were implemented around the Capitol complex in association with the State of the Union. Now, you, the Sergeant at Arms of the House and of the Senate, convened to discuss and vote on the temporary security measures to be implemented, correct?
That is correct.
And one of the measures that you opted to discuss and vote upon was the construction of a perimeter fence around the Capitol complex. Is that right?
That is correct.
And you, in particular, voted in support of the addition of that fence to our complex for the State of the Union this week, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And isn't it also true, sir, that there was no specific threat information related to the accumulation of crowds or the need to control crowds around the State of the Union?
That is correct, and also on January 6th, there was no specific threat as well.
So, just to be clear, in the absence of any specific threat information about the need for such fencing and at a cost of over $1 million to taxpayers, you voted in support of construction of the perimeter fence for the State of the Union this week.
So the fence itself cost $872,000. It was reimbursed by the Secret Service to AOC, and based off of the security measures that the Capitol Police and the Secret Service said that they would need if the fence was not constructed, it actually worked out that in my calculations that the fence would be the cheaper solution.
And if I understood your earlier testimony correctly, you also pointed out that today the Capitol complex is more secure than it has been for prior State of the Union addresses. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Let's turn our attention to the use of government vehicles. So you've testified for us here today that it was your assessment that appropriate use of your official government vehicle is not simply going to and from work, but that it should also appropriately include use for personal errands and other things, so that in the event of an emergency, return expeditiously to the complex, is that right?
With the exception, I would take the personal, because it's part of my job to be ready and respond regardless of where I am and when something happens.
So you would not characterize it as personal use, but if you were using your official government vehicle to go to an event or occasion that was not related to your official business, your position is nonetheless that it's important that you be able to do so that you can get back here in the event of an emergency, correct?
Yes, and I will say, for example, one of the things they said in the IG report is that I went
Yep.
to.
Here's my question for you, sir. I would like to know, during your tenure as architect of the Capitol, how many times were you in your official vehicle at an occasion or an event that was not official business that you actually returned to campus in a state of emergency?
Well, I can tell you one of the things they alluded to in the IG report.
Number?
Well, I have to preface it with this.
Did it ever happen?
So yes, there is. But what I want to preface it with is, much like from my military career, you train for a state of readiness, and you hope you never have to do it, but you then, if you have to do it, you have to be ready to do it, and that's the purpose.
All right. So there was not an occasion during your tenure when it was actually necessary to leave and return on an emergency basis, but your testimony today is that you maintained that position for a state of readiness.
Yes.
All right. Now, going back to the use of others, of the official vehicle, if I understand your testimony today, it is that you are unsure, and tell me if I've got this wrong, but your testimony seemed to be that you were unsure if your wife or daughter might have ever driven an official vehicle without you in the vehicle.
That is correct. I'm saying, what I said is I can't tell you if they did or not, because it's something that I don't know specifically.
So just to be clear, you do not have personal knowledge of your wife or daughter ever using an official vehicle without you in the vehicle, is that correct?
What I'm saying is I was telling you is I can't answer that question because I don't know is the answer.
So you do not know, which is where I started. You are not sure, you do not know if your wife or daughter ever drove an official vehicle without you inside the vehicle.
Yeah, I'll say if you have an instance that is in the full report that I don't know
No,
of.
I'm just asking you, for your personal knowledge, is there a time where you were aware that either your wife or any other person drove an official government vehicle assigned to you without you inside the vehicle?
I can't think of one right now.
Okay.
And again, I'm not denying that it may not happen. I'm just saying I can't think of it.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I believe my time has expired.
Thank you very much. In conversation with the ranking member, we're going to do one additional question on each side, and then small conclusion remarks, and we will then wrap up today's hearing. The chair now recognizes the ranking member, Mr. Morelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to go back to the Inspector General's report as it relates to Phase 1 and Phase 2 of the Cannon project. And the IG identifies $54,246 in unallowable costs, question $234,000 in legal fees for allowability and reasonableness, and $286,000, almost $287,000, with no or insufficient supporting documentation. That totals $575,562, nearly $600,000. I have not seen any response to that. I wondered if you could give me your rationale for those costs.
Yes, real quickly, and I think some of the numbers that you added up that aren't necessarily cumulative, they're just inclusive. So there was $286,933 of insufficiently supported costs. Of that, after the IG recommended we investigate, 198,763 were supported. There's 16,500 still under scrutiny. In the second IG report, which referenced 55,235 thousand, of that, $29,735 in the costs are neither legally or administratively able to be recovered. So in a billion-dollar program, although they may have identified, what they identified was questionable costs, not costs that were done out of impropriety or anything like that. And everything that was determined to be recoverable, we have recovered.
So may I ask, Mr. Chair, if we could just ask the witness if you could supply us with some detail on those in written following up, but I'd like some accounting for this if you could. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely, and I welcome it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. The chair now recognizes himself for the purpose of it asking an additional question. My colleague, Mr. Loudermilk, was engaged with you regarding, in particular, the security of the campus. And I want to make sure my understanding is that many of these in-depth findings from the comprehensive capital security assessment and the details on supplemental spending have been classified, and the update on projects with physical security implications document indicates as such. Who classified this? If in prior testimony before this committee, you stated that no entity in the legislative branch has classification authority.
So we work with an external support agency, and they have classifying authority. And I will be more than willing to have a discussion with you about this in a setting that's more appropriate.
I appreciate that. I look forward to that. This committee does. I know last night your office released an update on projects with physical security implications, labeling it controlled unclassified information, law enforcement sensitive. That briefing came out, of course, hours before this hearing. I think that actually states to the importance of the oversight that this committee does. And this committee is going to continue working on oversight over important legislative branch entities. We're going to continue to do it in the nonpartisan manner we did here. I appreciate the work of the ranking member, because this is about accountability for the American people. I have a few closing remarks, but I want to yield to the ranking member if he has closing remarks first.
Well, first let me thank my colleague and the chairman of this committee for organizing this hearing. Appreciate my colleagues and their, I thought, very, very important questions, and want to thank them all for their input this morning. I will just say that I think from our perspective, and I think you're hearing this loud and clear, I think we still need to understand many of the questions that have been raised in the Inspector General's report. I think we need greater clarity on personal conduct that involved the use of vehicles, and we need more clarity on how that was done. I think, in addition, this raises questions of succession planning and the need to have a deputy in place in the case of a vacancy, as Mr. Kilmer pointed out. I'd like more documentation on what happened relative to some of the costs in the IG report. So I think there's a lot that we learned here this morning. I think there's a lot more for us to learn, and I think we're going to continue to pursue to make sure that the American public gets their share of, or gets the value that they put into this job and the importance of this job, that we're making sure that those dollars are well spent and can be accounted for. And again, I want to thank you and Mr. Chairman for organizing this hearing.
The gentleman yields back. I agree with the ranking member. I think we made some progress today. It had been 3 months since the Inspector General's report was released. To the best of my knowledge, today is the first day that you've spoken on that topic on the record. I think it's important that additional information is ultimately provided such that the AOC's office can operate at the highest level of function. I'd like to comment that there's many individuals that work under your leadership, and I want to speak directly to them and just say thank you for the work that you do, that these employees do every day to make this Capitol operate. We've had a discussion on the leadership side, but the men and women who are working in the office of the architect of the Capitol day in and day out do yeoman's work, and I just want to recognize those individuals who are not here with us today. We're going to continue a robust oversight agenda on this committee, as I noted earlier. I want to reference back to one thing you noted. You noted as your role on the Capitol Police Board, which we discussed, that there was no actionable intel provided to the Capitol Police Board prior to January 6th. We will be reviewing the oversight. We'll be reviewing the structure of the Capitol Police Board going forward, and so I will leave that there as a nugget that we will ultimately come back to in this committee. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Blanton, for your testimony and for appearing before us today. It has been helpful. Members of the committee may have some additional questions for you, and we ask that you'd respond to these questions in writing. Without objection, each member will have 5 legislative days to insert additional materials into the record or to revise and extend their remarks. One quick. If there's no further business, I thank the members for their participation, and without objection, the committee stands adjourned.